How do you turn your brilliant startup idea into a successful business? This is the Leaders of Transformation podcast. And on this show, we interview difference makers and world changers who are disrupting for good. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Nicole Jansen, and our guest today is Stephen Hoffman, or better known as Captain Hoff. He is the chairman and CEO of Founder Space, which is a global innovation hub for entrepreneurs, corporations, and investors with over 50 partners in 22 countries. He is also a venture investor, the founder of 3 venture-backed and 2 bootstrapped startups, and the author of several award-winning books, including Make Elephants Fly, Surviving a Startup, and The 5 Forces. Today, we're going to actually explore the startup world and what entrepreneurs need to know to launch a startup, how to avoid the deadly mistakes that a lot of entrepreneurs make when launching, and some of the behind the scenes tips that you only get from somebody who is knee deep and has been in this world for so many years and is founder of one of the top startup accelerators in the world. So we're just excited to have him here. Steve, welcome to Leaders Transformation.
Thank you for having me. And I would say I'm more than knee deep. I am neck deep in the whole startup ecosystem.
Sometimes probably over the top, but
yes, I'm drowning in it.
So that is awesome. That's awesome. Before we go any further, I do want to do a shout out to JV Crum III. He is he's a good friend of mine, actually. I've known him for a number of years. He had Captain Hoff on his show and recommended and said, hey, you need to have him on your show as well. His show is consciousmillionaire.com. So if you haven't checked that out, I would definitely recommend you do that. He has interviewed, over 2,000 people. I mean, it's a big show. It's been around for a long time. So very successful. Check it out. And one last thing, this podcast is actually brought to you by my coaching and training company. So if you are a leader who wants to be better, do better, make a greater impact in the world, you can learn more about the coaching that I provide and a little bit even just about my style. And if that works for you, for what you're looking to accomplish, you can actually book a time in my calendar, and you can go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching, and all the information is there. So with that, Captain Hoff, let's dive into this, this space, this startup space, which is fun and it's exciting. And there's a lot of different aspects to it. And I know that you've been all in and around it, like you said, neck deep in it. Just give us a little bit of sense to start off with, where are you right now? What is your primary role right now? And how did you get there?
So I got there through a circuitous path, zigzagging my way through life. But honestly, I now run Founder Space. It is a global startup innovation hub. We work with entrepreneurs all over the world. I work with hundreds of entrepreneurs every year, helping them grow their businesses, scale them, raise venture capital, everything involved. I got here by doing startups myself. So I did 3 venture funded startups in Silicon Valley, 2 bootstrap startups. So I know what it's like to be in the trenches as an entrepreneur, struggling to survive. And then I also know what it's like now to be an investor, investing in startups, and to be someone who goes deep with startups, really mentors them, helps them overcome those roadblocks that they're facing. So I can talk to you really about the ecosystem that we see, not just in Silicon Valley these days, but it's all over the world. Austin, Texas, Seattle, New York, you name it, Pittsburgh, it's Beijing, Berlin. It doesn't matter where you are. There are venture capitalists, they are funding startups. And what I like to do is help entrepreneurs really avoid the mistakes. Most startups don't survive. I wrote my book, Surviving a Startup, because the majority don't. But if you know what you're doing, you can dramatically increase your odds.
Well, in that book that you're talking about, I actually read it and I was like, wow, this has got to be the most comprehensive guide on startup success that I have ever come across. I mean, it is from cover to cover. There's no fluff in that book. There is a hardcore, this is what you do, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, this is how you do it. I mean, it's awesome. And so thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, I put everything in there I wished I knew when I did my first and second and third start. Yeah, I learned along the way. And I can give your audience a few fundamental tips if you'd like.
Please. Yes.
So when you're starting a company, which is the time where it's easiest to fail, because the risk at the beginning stages is so much higher. Later on, once you're closing lots of money, once you've figured out your product market fit, things are fine. But at the beginning, where you're scrambling around, really, really tough. The number one myth out there is that you need an epiphany. You need a brilliant idea to start a company. Now, this, everybody, thinks that, oh, I have this idea. Now I should start the company. And they dive into it. And then they start building something and they scrabbling it together. And more often than not, what their idea was doesn't work. And that's because if you're trying to think of a new breakthrough idea, an idea that can become not just a little business like a neighborhood restaurant or something like that, but a big scalable business over time, if you're coming up with those ideas, they are few and far between. And most of them, what's in your head is not what's in reality. So the entrepreneur's job is to actually go into the real world and figure this out. And this is why I say actually having an idea when you start can be a detriment, because it can lock you in. As soon as you fall in love with your idea, you want to prove to everybody else it works, including yourself. And you don't want to let that idea go. But in reality, most of the successful entrepreneurs out there have started with one idea, worked through it, and then hit roadblocks, and then had to pivot and change. And that, based on what they learned doing that, that is when they actually make the breakthrough.
So this is interesting that you say that, because most people think that you've got to have this brilliant idea first. It's like the why comes first, as Simon Sinek talks about, and all of that. But they think about it like this narrow thing, this idea, this
specific idea.
Yes. So what you're talking about is actually there is a why, but there might be a bigger why. And then how they're going to get there, that idea might evolve.
Yeah, let me give you a perfect example. So you could have this idea, I'm going to transform the fishing industry because fishing isn't sustainable. We're polluting our oceans. We're decimating the fish populations. The workers are treated terribly, whatever. I'm going to transform this. And you could have a specific idea on how the fishing industry should transform. Well, what you're probably going to find, because most innovators come from the outside, in those industries themselves, like the fishing industries, they don't really change themselves. They just keep doing what they're doing. They want to make money. So if you come in from the outside and you start pitching them on your idea, they're probably going to look at it and go, we don't want to do this. Like, what's in it for us? Whatever you have to make us more sustainable, we don't care. You're probably going to be much more successful if you go to the fishing industry with a general vision saying, we want to transform this. We don't know specifically how, but we are going to figure out how to make this fishing industry better, more profitable, more sustainable, more humane to their workers and everything else. Then you go into the fishing industry, and the way you really get them to transform is you have to understand what their problems are. You have to solve their problems. You can't solve your problems. Your motivation might be, our fish populations are being decimated. But their motivation is, let's just keep going till the fish run out. As long as they're very short-sighted. So you have to go in there and start to solve their problems. And in the process of using new technologies and everything else, you make them more efficient. You make them more targeted on which fish species they go after. You change their fishing methods by figuring it out with them. Now, you can't do this alone. So what I always say is you can have the best idea in the world. And I see this, I work with entrepreneurs all the time. They have these ideas and they go out there by themselves, and they almost always fail because they don't have the people around them to actually execute on the idea. Having an idea was one thing. Actually building it into a business, something entirely different. So I say, don't start with an idea. Instead of doing that, put 80% of your time up front from the day you say you want to start up into finding the people you need to execute on a vision. So you can say, I want to transform the fishing industry, or I want to transform that restaurant business. Doesn't matter what industry you want to transform. Then you find amazing people somebody who really knows technology well, extremely well, somebody who understands maybe how that traditional industry works, somebody who's a great UI and UX designer, can design an amazing experience. You start to put these together, and then not alone, but as a team, you go into that industry. Let's say it's the restaurant industry. You can have a million ideas, but if you haven't run a restaurant, you don't know like the problems that they have. So you start to go in there and talk to the owners, talk to the chefs, talk to the staff. What's causing you a headache? They might not have an idea because they don't really understand technology and what's coming and how the world is changing. They're just focused on their business, their restaurant. You have a broader vision, and you can start to connect the dots, say, oh, you could actually use this new technology to totally transform how you're doing business. And that thing that you're spending so much time on that you think, oh, we've done it this way forever, we have to spend time on it. You don't. You could free up that time. Boom. Could be a gold mine for you. That is where the great ideas come in. But it doesn't come in for you alone. And you don't want one idea. You want to come in there with dozens of ideas and be asking questions, interacting with them, coming up with new ideas all the time until you find an idea that has the power to actually explode, meaning there's a huge demand for it. The restaurant people are like, oh my God, we need it. Or the fishing people are like, we never thought of it. That's possible. We want that product. That's when you hit it.
This is a totally different approach than most people take when it comes to this, because what you're actually saying is you're co-creating the solution, and you're identifying, like you said, figure out what the problem is that they have rather than trying to convince them. I remember a client, which I fired at one point, but I said to him, I said, look, he actually said to me at one point, he goes, you got to understand, Nicole, we have the puppy and everybody wants the puppy. And I went, I have news for you. Nobody wants your puppy. Like, you're so attached to this thing and doing it in your way. And it's exactly what you said. And it's like, they might want your puppy if you actually went into their world a little bit to understand what it is that they're looking for. You could create so much better product than what it is that you have going on. So anyway, I had flashbacks to that conversation, and I'm keeping it clean so here, but it was a straight up conversation.
Everybody thinks
honest.
Their baby is just the most beautiful baby in the world, and nobody else cares. They don't care. I'll give you a real world example, a couple real quickly that I write about in my book. One is YouTube. The founders of YouTube, when they went into the real world, they went in with the idea, not that we're going to create the biggest video destination site in the world and online broadcast network. That wasn't their idea at all. Their original idea was, we're going to build a video dating network. Video dating. Now, it turns out people don't want a video date. So they thought video dating would be cool, but when they actually put it out there, nobody cared. So what they did was actually, they were fumbling around. And at a certain point, they wanted to share a video they had with their friends. And there was no easy way to do it. But they go, hey, we built this video dating site. What if we uploaded it there? And instead of sharing this huge file, we just shared the link and they could watch it online. That simple breakthrough insight they became YouTube we know today, right? Because everybody started using their platform to share videos. You look at almost any company out there and they've transformed. Google, when they started, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, they thought they were doing a nonprofit, which is ironic for one of the most profitable companies in the history of humankind. They were doing, because what they were doing was they were building a way for academics to find research papers online. And that's a niche. It's a really niche. So they thought they were doing a service. They were at Stanford. And it was only much later when they said, hey, we could use this technology to allow anybody to find anything online. That's when they exploded. That's when they became the Google we know. And I could go on and on and on, but there's another one. We all heard of Groupon. So when Andrew Mason started Groupon, it was he again was doing a site for social good. And it was a site where people could come, it was called The Point, and they could get together and collaborate on projects to help society. Well, when he launched this, people were doing it, but it wasn't super active. But there was one group on there that was growing, and the other groups really weren't growing. And what they were doing was they were getting together and they were banding together to get discounts on products. as a group. And when he saw that, he wanted to shut him down. He wanted to kill it because he was like, this isn't the point. It's not what we're supposed to be doing on thepoint.com. Get these people off my site. But his investor was like, wait, don't shut it down. Let's see what happens. Like nothing much else is happening on your site. These people are actually like growing. So at a certain point, the investor insisted that Andrew Mason launched this as a separate product called Groupon. And again, that's when it exploded. So you, in your business, whatever idea you have in your head, it's probably wrong. Yelp, the review feature on Yelp where you give the restaurant 5 stars, that was a side thought. That was an extra feature. That wasn't what Yelp was about when it launched. They just found later on, once they were out there, oh, people like reviewing. They didn't think people would like reviewing. So you never know.
Wow. Well, it comes back to having the right team, because you talk about that investor who goes, hey, wait a second, having the right team and listening, like paying attention to the market and what the market's telling you. So how does someone, let's say they have an idea and they're like, wow, we feel like we have this traction. I mean, you probably have heard that lots of times. My friends and family think it's amazing. But how do you take it from that stage of, the core people that I know love it to it being like a Groupon or a Yelp or whatever, the much bigger thing? Like there is a lot that happens between here and there.
Yes. Well, the first thing you need to understand is it's great that your friends and family love it, but they might love anything you do.
Yeah, they're polite.
And they might not. They want to support you. They want to believe in you. And they might not be the target users or target customers. So you really need to know who your customers are. That's the number one thing. Like if you don't know who your customers are, you need to figure it out. And if you're launching a consumer product, the best way to do it is build something really light and small. I have a rule, and that is people don't buy something for multiple reasons. When somebody buys something, almost every time they buy it for one really important reason. So it doesn't matter that you have like 30 features in there and all this stuff, because what they're going to look at is what's the one thing you do that nobody else is doing that I need to get done? Like what's the one absolutely essential, amazing thing that your product or service gives me that I can't get elsewhere? Because if they can get it elsewhere, they're probably already getting elsewhere. So you're never going to break through, first of all, if you have a product that in a big way. You could break through in a small way, but you're not going to like have these companies that explode if your product is incrementally better than the competition, because nobody wants to switch. Nobody wants time. Like I've had entrepreneurs and they've come to me are like, is your product, what do you think of my product? Is it good? Is it good? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not your customer. So I don't know. Secondly, even if I am your customer, I'm only one person. So what I want you to go out and talk to as many people as possible, talk to 100 people and come back to me. So I sent like one entrepreneur out there. He talked to 100 different potential customers, comes back to me and he says, Captain Hoff, which is my nickname, Captain, I showed this to everybody and everybody seemed to like it. Everybody told me to come back when it's ready and they will try it out. And I looked at him and I go, you know what they're telling you? They are telling you you're dead in the water. Your idea is going to sink like, 100-pound lead weight. You are going nowhere. And I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm not a sadist. I don't want to punish this entrepreneur. I'm saying it because it's the truth. If somebody tells you that's nice, come back later, they will never buy your product. Never. People are too busy. Like, honestly, the reaction he needed to get was very simple. And this is how you can know, like, if your product's going to take off. The reaction isn't, oh, that's great, come back when it's done, I'll try it out, or I'll try it out, send it to me, and then they don't respond, they don't do much. What you need them to say is, oh my God, I need that now. Can I get that? That's exactly what that's amazing. Like, I've been waiting for that to come along. So whatever it is, if it's an entertainment product, if it's a B2B product, it doesn't matter. If they don't have a really strong reaction and you're not getting that from a good portion of the people you show it to, you don't have anything. You don't have anything. If you do get it, and there's enough of those people out there to become a big market, you have something. So That is kind of that, when entrepreneurs ask me, how do I get to that next level, is go out there. And I always say, your job as an entrepreneur is not to come up with the greatest idea, because you have to remember, Mark Zuckerberg didn't think of Facebook. We all know that. He copied it. Elon Musk didn't invent Tesla. He was just an investor in Tesla, and he came in later. He saw that, wow, there's, electric cars are going to take off. And he kind of took over that company and took all the credit. Kalanick, who did Uber, wasn't his idea either. He was just an early stage investor who came in, saw the potential, took it over. Doesn't matter whose idea it is. Like, don't care about where the idea comes from. Doesn't have to come from you. Great entrepreneurs don't necessarily come up with the ideas. They're not inventors. Great entrepreneurs, what they do is they are demand hunters. They go into the real world and they start searching for pent up pockets of demand that are big enough to drive explosive growth. If you spend all your time first getting together the right team and then going into the world in an area you are interested in and looking for these pockets of demand that aren't being met by anybody else out there and unlocking those, that is how you get to the next level.
That is so good. And I remember that story because you shared it in your book, and I was like, wow, that's hard. But at the same time, you were being honest with him because you didn't want him to actually have false assumptions. And I think that that's important. And as far as the people that are on your team that are going to be honest with you and tell you the truth. And even if you don't like it, some of my greatest mentors that I've ever had were the ones that ticked me off because they told me things I didn't want to hear. But later on, I said, thank you. I'm glad you told me because that made me better. So I love that. Let's shift gears for a moment because I know that when you look at investing in startups, and because you're an investor, a lot of times people say, what are investors looking for? Obviously, they're looking at the numbers, but what are they specifically looking for, and how do I make that connection? And maybe even talk in that about the false perception that like they need money to be more successful, and where oftentimes that's not really what they need at that moment.
So everybody thinks they need money. Everybody wants money, because when you're starting out a company with no money, it's really tough. You're like, if I just had a little money, it'd make all the difference. So first of all, you do need some money to get going. You need enough to survive on, and you need enough to build the initial version of your product or service to get something out there. So, but you don't need necessarily a lot of money. So you don't need millions and millions of dollars in most cases. Now, there are projects out there that require huge amounts of upfront capital. You're building a solar farm, it's like a huge amount of upfront capital. You're, building Tesla or SpaceX. Those companies were not launched on a little bit of money. But let's face it, most of us aren't Elon Musk. We don't have an amazing track record. We don't have all these rich friends who just want to give us massive amounts of money. If you aren't that person, I say, don't start with that idea. First of all, don't start with an idea that requires $100 million to get off the ground, because you're not going to get it. Let's face it, you're not. The really successful entrepreneurs, you work within their budget, and their budget is what you already have, not what you need to raise. So figure out, is there an idea? And the beauty of today's world is with new technology, with the cloud, it's so cheap to launch a website or an app or a service. You really just need your time and the time of other people who are talented, like some engineers or other people who can actually implement it. So pick those type of ideas. Secondly, getting money too early can absolutely kill you, like getting too much money too early. I've seen this happen over and over and over again in Silicon Valley. Some startup, they're well connected or they meet the right people, and some investor, they don't have to be that smart, writes them a big check for a lot of money, and they run out there. But what they haven't done is that work I talked about earlier. They haven't figured out the pocket of demand. They haven't been a demand hunter. They come up with a nifty idea that they think people want, but there's a disconnect. This is where most funded startups fail. So most funded startups fail because they think they have a product market fit and they don't. Meaning they think that the customers love and absolutely need their product. They build it all out, they put it out there. And when they don't, because they have a lot of money, you know what they do? They've hired a big team, they've sold their investors on this, they're like, have momentum. They start buying customers. So they start acquiring new customers, and you can burn through millions and millions of dollars on new customers, and it can seem like you're growing like crazy, only to have you crash. Because at the end of the day, if those, and I've seen this happen, if those customers aren't sticking around, if they aren't coming back and buying, if you don't have a profitable business model, if you're paying way more for the customers than they'll ever spend on your product or service, your company, it's an illusion, right? It's an illusion of growth. And I've seen companies that have actually been out there, like boo.com, and there are a whole bunch of these companies that you don't hear of anymore. They don't exist, where they raised hundreds of millions of dollars pumping in customers, only to have the whole house of cards go down. Like it was all built on nothing. So don't do that. You're much better off, actually, in most cases, if you raise just enough capital to actually go into the market and really understand who your customer is, why they're buying, prove that they will buy, and that they will, and then get the metrics, the data that they keep coming back and buying more and more and more, that you get that engine going. And that's when venture capital comes in. And that's when venture capital is really, really useful in scaling something that already works.
Yes, so you're using the money to actually do, like you just said, doing the scaling to build the systems to support the demand that you've already established and created. So I love that. That's a great distinction. So when people are thinking about what to use their money for, even going for loans and all that kind of stuff, it's like, what do they do? You know, they put all we're going to do this, we're going to do marketing, we're going to go all of those things, and they're putting themselves on the line to whether it's to pay it back, or whether it is to have an investor who's like, where's my return on investment, without doing the work themselves. So what you're saying is to start with the money you have and go from there. Very interesting. And again, this is why somebody like you who goes, look, I've done it. We've done it all different ways. We've seen it all different ways. We can just learn so much from you. And I know that on your website, you have courses and some of the things, maybe even just kind of talk a little bit about founder space, what you offer, why is it different than, maybe if it is different than other startups, accelerators that are out there, maybe for those that are not familiar with incubators and accelerators and the difference and where you fit.
Yeah, so in founder space, we like to say we're a little different than the other accelerators. We're more of an innovation hub. So we work all over the world. Pre-COVID, I was traveling 70% of the time, going, all across Asia, all across Europe, working with entrepreneurs. And what we like to do is connect entrepreneurs with investors, connect entrepreneurs with resources globally. That is our mission. So our mission isn't necessarily to just have a space. And we run programs, educational programs, that aren't like a lot of people run 6-month or 3-month accelerators where you come in and you work along. We do it much differently. So we run more of intensive boot camps. Like you come in with us, you come in for, a couple days or a couple weeks, and we work really intensely with you over a short period of time to go like deep on your business model, totally overhaul things, and position you so that either what you need, what those roadblocks are, and you understand a way around them, and you can start to change your business, or you are prepared to raise capital. That is what we do.
Got it. So at what point do they come to you? What's the best time and stage to come to you at?
So the best time, the easiest time to help somebody is when they have identified that pent-up demand. So that is the best time. If you're pre that, you're just casting about. Like you don't have it.
You send them away and say, go do this, and then come back when you've got.
Yeah, we say, look, get us some proof that, and it doesn't have to be a lot of proof. Like it literally, find 3 customers who are crazy about your product, and let's talk to them. Yeah. Let's see what you're going to do for them and how it's going to work. Because if it's pre that, everybody has an idea, and 99% of those just won't go. That's the real world.
Yeah. How important is, talk about this, because this show is Leaders of Transformation. There's a leadership aspect to this. How important is leadership and to like an idea, to a startup, and how does someone build that team? Where do they go? Let's say they have identified a demand maybe with a small few people, but now they've got to grow that, and just because I know that, like, we watch Shark Tank and they may see a great idea and they're like, Kevin O'Leary's and be like, that's a great idea. I'll give you this much. And then I never want to see you again because, they just see that founder is just not in the position to take this to the next level.
Yes.
So it is a really important piece. Like you said, I mean, I think we all have had ideas. I mean, who hasn't had an idea in the
anybody can have an
shower?
idea.
But it's taking that to, to a level of success and building a company around it is very different. So
yeah, I've seen leadership is absolutely the most important thing for the role of CEO. So if you are going to be a CEO in a startup company, you don't have to be technical. You don't have to necessarily, understand how to design any, user interface or user experience. You don't have to be a marketing whiz, but you do have to be able to bring the people you need onto the team, give them a vision and set a direction and lead them there. And invariably, if the CEO does not have those capabilities, the startup will almost always drop the ball. Like they just won't go. Like I've seen CEOs, and this is why I said spend 80% of your time upfront finding great people. Because honestly, if you can prove that you can get great people onto your team when you have no money, when you just have an idea, just have a vision of where you want to go, you're proving your leadership. If
yeah, it's true.
When I interview people to be managers, and when, really smart people do interviews for managers who are like, they don't, they can look and see what college you went to or what job experience you have. But what they're really interested is, have you started a project from scratch or taken over a project and taken it to the next level? How did you do that? Who did you, what process did you go through? And the process for success almost invariably means I brought in people and I brought in resources that nobody else could. So great leaders out there are able to convince people to join them and take a huge risk. And they do it because most people out there, if you have a job at Google or Microsoft or wherever, you can work for the money, you're comfortable doing that, but people want more. They want a job that is meaningful to them. They want a job that they can make a big difference in this world and in transforming the world, doing something better for this world. That is what great leaders give people. They give people the sense that they are on a mission and that their work matters. It matters. It's not just about the money, because you're never going to be able to compete with, Microsoft or Facebook or Google on salary at the beginning. Never, unless you're already rich. So you're going to have to, but you can not only compete, but you can win on showing people a path to the future, a path to making things better. That's a great leader. Great leader will take those same skills and ideas, go out and get customers, show customers the future, or this is the future, bring them on board. Go out and get press to cover the company. Go out and get venture capital. It's that leadership skill all the way through that matters. So if you don't have it, honestly, not everybody's cut out to be a leader. And if you are really good technically, or you're really good at marketing and analytics, focus on what you're great at and get somebody else to be the leader. You don't have to be the leader to be a co-founder and have a really successful company. You need to know who you are and what your strengths are.
Yes, this reminds me of someone who came to me through a referral, and he had this brilliant idea and had some traction and all of the things. So he had put quite a bit of time and effort into this, but he was the engineer. He was the one who had developed it. But he did not know even how to get, to enroll a CEO to come on board, because he couldn't afford to pay for because there's so many options out there for them. Right. And so that was the challenge for him. It's how do I get that person? He was kind of hoping that maybe I would be. It's and that's not my expertise. It's not my area. I don't know anything about this industry that you're in. And not interested is not part of what I'm looking to do. But it's tough, because a lot of these people that have these great ideas, now it's getting that CEO and being humble enough to say that they're not the person that is to be the CEO just because it was their idea, but to bring the right person on board who can do that. What you said, and that's sales. I mean, that's sales 101. I mean, you have to learn you have to know how to sell your team, sell your vendors, sell your customers, sell the PR. you got to gain buy-in and enroll people in the vision of what you're doing. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good your idea is. Somebody else will pick it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of other people out there. I'll tell you,
Yeah.
even if you think it's the most unique, original idea that's ever existed, I can guarantee you there's somebody in Finland or South Africa or China working on it right now.
Yeah. Well, that's encouraging, isn't it? No,
no, but
it is encouraging.
It's the ones
though.
that execute the best at the end of the day.
Yes.
So finding the right idea at the right time and having the right team, that is the winning formula. And great leaders, like, you can become a much better leader. So it's not like you can't improve yourself. And sometimes the founder will be the CEO at the beginning, early stages, to bring people together. And then as the company grows, they'll bring in a more experienced person. Right. That often happens.
Yeah. Yeah. This is great. Captain Hoff, I so appreciate you just sharing from your perspective. You have so much. I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, and there's no way that we're going to do it all justice in this conversation here.
Yes,
but
there's a lot of other stuff I cover, like demand and like building ecosystems.
Yes.
And, building a platform, not a product, all of these things.
Yes. And so where do people find that information out and get, even your books, and talk a little bit about what they've got available in terms of resources?
Sure. If people want to reach me, I'm super easy to find. Just go to founderspace.com. Founderspace. You can find my books, my videos, all sorts of different material to educate entrepreneurs. And you can also contact me right from the website. And I am also on almost every social network. So you can just search for Captain Hoff or Steve Hoffman in Founderspace. And a great place to reach me is LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here today. And I'm just excited to hear all the stories that are going to come out of this, the people that maybe there's the startups that are knee deep in it and they want to figure out how to pivot. And also those that have ideas that maybe they're just trying to figure out how to get started. I'm looking forward to hearing those stories. So for our listeners, if you have those stories, we'd love to hear them and how this has impacted you. I believe that leaders of transformation take action. So it's not just about listening and gathering information. There is a point, and we've been talking about here today, that you need to take action. You need to go out there and do something with that information. And so I encourage you to do that. And as you are doing that, to clarify, that's when we'd love to hear from you and hear how this is impacting you and what you're up to and how you're making a difference in the world. Because I do believe that every single person is capable of being a leader of transformation. And whatever your role is going to be in that, to making this world a better place for everyone. So with that, you can go to leadersoftransformation.com, contact us through that. Of course, you can find us all on social as well. And go check out founderspace.com, find out what Captain Hoff is doing. He's got multiple books. There's Make Elephants Fly, The 5 Forces, Surviving a Startup, which is the one we've been talking about here a lot today. I mean, I forget how many pages it is, but it is full of information. If you have a startup, or you are thinking of launching a startup, or you're an entrepreneur and you just want to understand how to be a better entrepreneur, go get a copy of that book. It'll serve you well. So with that, we appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.